In this lesson, we'll dive deeper into f-stops and lens options. By now you know that the two most important things that affect the overall look of your photo are the focal length and the depth of field, which relates to the aperture. First and foremost, let's review the mechanics of it all. Here you can see a lens wide open. This means that within the lens, the aperture of the lens is fully open, allowing in the maximum amount of light possible. Now, as we close down or make the aperture smaller, we are reducing the amount of light allowed into it. This control of light is measured in f-stops. These are numbers that you will use every time you pick up your camera and set your exposure. The lower the f-stop number, the more light is being allowed in. With each larger number, the amount of light allowed into your camera is cut in half. So when you are set to f4 and go to f5.6, you effectively cut the light coming in by half. Now if you move from f8 to f5.6, you've doubled the amount of light that is entering your camera. You will also see that some lenses are f3.5, and this is considered a half stop, meaning halfway between 2.8 and f4. Here's another term you might hear photographers saying. When someone asks how fast a lens is, they're referring to the f-stop when the lens is wide open, or the smallest f-stop number. So a fast lens would be one that opens up to something like f1.4 or f2. A slow lens might be only able to open up to f4. For example, my 24 to 70 f2.8 is faster than my 70 to 200 f4, but not as fast as my 50mm f1.4. Now beyond the control of light, the f-stop also makes a huge difference in the overall look of your image. Remember from earlier that the wider open you are, the shallower the depth of field there is. The more closed down you are, the deeper the depth of field and the more that will be in focus. Due to this, some people love shooting with a 24mm f1.4 because you get really great wide angle images but still that shallow depth of field. Additionally, sometimes people taking photos that are on a telephoto lens prefer to close down to f8 because more will be in focus and will be easier to get a clear shot. If you are shooting on a 200mm at f2.8, it can be really tricky to get a really nice in-focus image if things are moving around. Here, you can see how depth of field changes from f1.4 all the way to f22. Another thing to remember with this is that it all depends on how close your subject is. The closer they are, the shallower the depth of field, and the farther away they are, the more that will be in focus. Now, as you look around for lenses to purchase, you will notice that the ones that are f1.4 are typically more expensive, and ones that are higher than f1.4, like f2, f4 for example, are typically much more economical. This is because the mechanics of building an f1.4 lens is more difficult than one with a smaller aperture. You will also see on some zoom lenses, meaning lenses with multiple focal lengths, the aperture will range from f3.5 to f5.6 for example. This means that as you zoom your lens in, moving from wider focal lengths to more telephoto focal lengths, the f-stop will reduce from 3.5 to 5.6. effectively reducing the amount of light allowed to enter when you're at a more telephoto focal length. This is again because the mechanics of having a non-variable aperture is more expensive to make. One thing to note is that as you get into ultra telephoto lenses, meaning 200mm and above, you will rarely see anything below an f4. This isn't because they're lacking in quality, but rather because there's so much glass in them that they require much more light to expose properly. Also, if you remember how shallow the depth of field was at f2.8, there really isn't a need to go any lower because it'd be near impossible to focus on anything. Here, you can see an 85mm f1.4 that is wide open. Look how crazy shallow depth of field that is. Can you imagine trying to get a crisp photo at 200mm f1.4? Another important note is that outside of super high-end lenses, the sharpest and best performance of lens will be around f4 or f5.6. And in terms of sharpness, we're not talking about being in focus, but the quality of the focus. So shooting at f4 will look sharper than shooting at f1.4, even if the focus is perfect. This is by no means to say that you never want to shoot at f1.4. It's just that the clearest image will come when shooting around f4. When you go out to purchase a lens, keep in mind that they will get more expensive as the aperture becomes faster. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to go and buy the fastest lens you can find. You just need to purchase the right lens for what you're trying to do.